Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is John Park and welcome to another series of tutorials. For today's demonstration, I'm going to teach you guys or share my insight on how to compose a shot in black and white. Typically, the way I like to start is actually understanding and studying existing film frames. So let's go ahead and open up some files of some existing film studies or film shots. And here I have just a couple of images that I picked out from a classic movie from Ben-Hur. It's an older film, but I wanted to really pick out just a couple of shots that I thought were interesting to me, and we are going to basically analyze and look at the graphic nature. I'm going to show you another set of shots that I picked out. Here's a second set of shots that I thought was really interesting in terms of camera, really simple composition, and looking at light and shadow compositions here. So when you guys are looking at this stuff, or typically when I look at it, there's a couple of things that do come to mind. One is generally the framing device of our subject matter, whether it's a character or a building, and also how it is actually being framed using light and shadow. So that's kind of the goal for today's demonstration, is how to simplify and break that down. So I like to actually combine these. I'm going to actually get both of these and convert them into black and white. I'll grab this first one here. Let's turn it black and white, and the second one as well. And what we're going to do here is, just by turning it black and white, we start to quickly evaluate and understand the lights and darks, and also areas of high contrast versus areas of very, very low contrast here. And that's some of the things that we want to just start keeping note of, especially when we start our sketches here. And just to get an exaggerated feel, I'm actually going to bump up my contrast to really get rid of any subtle midtones and just really understand and look at just extreme light and darks. And typically when I do these types of studies, I like to overexpose the shot just so that I can understand and analyze the graphic nature more than the subtleties of the shots. And that's going to be the goal for today. So let's get started. So what I'm going to do first here is I'm going to duplicate this layer, and let's go ahead and make our background a little darker. And I'm going to go ahead and start off with a blank white canvas for these guys. For today's tools and demonstration, I'm only going to be using three types of tools, which is going to be kind of the slanted hard brush. I'm going to use a soft brush just for gradients, and last but not least, I'm going to use a regular hard brush with dynamic settings. These are going to be the three tools. Mainly I'm going to use this for drawing, and this right here is just for gradients or I guess transitions and grads. And this right here is just for graphic marker. We'll just call it a marker. Basically, I'm going to use this like the way I would use a Sharpie of some sort, or like a big thick marker. So the first thing I'm going to take note of is, in my first scene, I just want to really look at just the basics of our composition. Now, if we look at and analyze our shot here, make another layer. Let's go ahead and save this out. And if we look at just the basic light and dark areas on these frames, we can quickly identify that it has a certain identifiable graphic shape here. There's white, there's another block here, and even this here is also a graphic shape. Now any subtlety I really want to just kind of eliminate and just simplify and group as much light and dark as I can. So even here we're going to have a figure which is going to be predominantly in light. We have a little bit of architecture that's being shown, and we have our main figure here in light, and also the ground. Everything else I'm going to simplify and either make it darker or just show indications of the architecture using some of our soft brush, but mainly we're going to keep it black and white, only 2 values. Same here, we have our light on the face, and we have our light hitting here, and there's just a gradation, right? Grad. And basically this is just to show light transitions, and that's kind of the extent of it. We can go even more in depth and show little gradations of the face here as well, but that's kind of what I want to analyze and break down. Now when we do our our study here, a couple of ways we can do it. We can actually start off by actually doing a quick sketch to understand our drawing here. I'm just going to go ahead and sketch out just really simply just the major areas of light. And even just some of the obvious structures and elements like tables and stuff like that. And this doesn't have to be the most perfect drawing. It's something just to kind of keep note of the basic composition. And I'm just going to simplify our characters. And some of the facial features that I'm seeing into very, very simple graphic shapes. And even here on the face, let's go ahead and turn off this red mark layer. I'm even going to simplify the way we see the figure here. I'm almost thinking that, you know, since the figure is actually being backlit by this open door, I think we're almost just only going to see his silhouette of the face, his hand gesture, and that's basically about it. And I just want to treat everything as a graphic design more so than, you know, depicting all of the details and elements, because this is all about lighting. So it's all about kind of how it graphically is going to read. We have some lighter shapes here and so forth. Okay, so there we go, we have that. Let's go ahead and do the second set here. And again, the goal for me is really just to understand lighting just through pure graphic design, and that's all I'm really after. You know, anything beyond that is going to be, you know, more of a trying to get the exactness of all the architecture, or trying to have a really nice illustration. But since these are studies, I'm going to keep it fairly objective for myself. And it's up to you guys in terms of how polished you want to make this, but the more graphic, the better. I'm even going to simplify a lot of the details here, like just right in the door. I'm just gonna say that, you know, it's almost better just to have like a graphic, a simple graphic like that. And even the door here might be nice to have more of a simple graphic as well, just to really simplify what we see here, because it's gonna get really complicated really quickly, and I just want to mark down all of my obvious dark areas and my light areas. And you're going to see a lot of this right here, where this is going to be a mid-tone, and this stuff here we're actually just going to consolidate and just treat this more as a dark value rather than a mid-tone value. A lot of this stuff I'm actually going to really darken, but my lights is going to be the belt, the hands, the areas of the face and neck. Okay. All right. Okay, so that's kind of a really simple basic sketch, just the way I'm doing it. Okay, nothing complex, right? It's pretty simple. Something that I have very, you know, much confidence that, you know, most people can do this. Okay, and then we're gonna do our last image here. And again, it doesn't have to be the most perfectly accurate, you know, anatomy. And I'm probably just saying this because, you know, my anatomy is horrible. However, I just want to get the basics of light and dark. This gets a little fussy, so we're gonna go ahead and simplify some of these lines here. This kind of reminds me of like you know, when our illustration teachers back in school would ask us to basically mark down the light and shadow shapes of a face before you go and paint. It always looked kind of strange to me, like doing this exercise, because it's kind of like you're trying to illustrate by creating like these little puzzle pieces. It's like the most bizarre thing. but it helped you to understand just the shapes. That was a really good part about that exercise. So again, when we get into our actual you know, black and white marking, then we can start to refine the shapes of the shadow shapes and any specific details that we see. But for the most part, I just want to kind of get a general vibe of the overall composition and shot. Make a selection here. We're just going to move it down in frame a little bit. And there we have it. This is kind of our basic underlay of the shot. And now I'm going to basically paint underneath this. And I'm going to use my flat brush here to start painting. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. So with something like this, I'm literally going to go as graphic as just putting black. Like black graphic shapes here. Okay. And these, I'm going to treat this as all graphic shapes. And we want to go really simple at first, okay? I just want you guys to just simplify everything and treat it as graphically as you can. If you want, if it helps, what we can do is we can actually lighten and put this on more of a red so you can see your marks a bit. And I'm just going to go ahead and just turn off our layers here so you guys can see the entire image. And it's just kind of like filling it in. So all we're doing here now, I like to just always start off with very hard hard to find details, such as the shadows, things like that, of that nature, before adding in all of my light information. Just to keep the process really simple. And have my light here on the hand, so I'm going to leave a little bit of that light here. Now again, this is probably not the exact shape, but it's just a good reminder of where light is going to be on that arm. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and let's add this little dark shadow here. And he's kind of holding this tool. And the face here of this character, I'm going to try to simplify the face here to kind of get as much of the features in a very graphic manner. Again, anything that's midtone, we have to make a very clear judgment whether we want to make it into a black graphic or we're going to keep it as a lighter shape. And so that's going to be the real challenge of this exercise, is just consolidating and editing it down for readability. And this is the reason why I love doing these studies, is because it gives us an opportunity to evaluate all the shots with kind of a different approach and different perspective on what to simplify, what to take from it, and what to eliminate. And even these shields here, I know that they have tons of details, but it probably won't do us any good. So I'm actually going to start off by going really, really simple. Kind of bounce around a little bit there, and then basically simplify this stuff here. And there's all these other indication of detail, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of abstractly try to make note of that. And there's all this like appliances here, like that's getting quite a bit of reflectivity on the top, so we can actually add a little bit of that. The details from the door, we'll go ahead and draw that in and erase away anywhere where we don't need those lines. And I generally treat these kind of like these little graphic marker studies. If you guys haven't really, if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, basically I used to do back in school. We actually used to do these little Sharpie marker studies using only 2 values to do a series of just film studies, or these little compositions, just to get a better understanding of how light and shadow works in a more filmic scenario. And that's kind of basically what I'm trying to recreate here. That same technique in Photoshop, and just a simplification of how we see composition in light and dark. I know it's like I'm like a broken record, and I've probably said that like 12 times, but there is a lot of value in just how we simplify and see things. So when I turn off my red marks here, you can start to see just the simple, clean graphic nature of this, right? And we start to understand exactly areas of just light and dark. I kind of like this abstract nature of, you know, basically our character here in the background getting a little bit kind of lost from the highlight. You definitely want to play with that. Okay, now since I have this here, it's a good time to just kind of refine just a couple of things, like around the face. And any detail like that. Maybe punch in some highlight details here on the clothing. Anything that would be worth noting. And keep in mind, like, notice the way I'm actually simplifying my my graphic shapes. I'm consolidating and grouping things. Now where the soft brush comes in, and this is where I'm gonna actually do this very, very lightly, is I'm gonna make a selection and just in certain areas. However, I actually just want to use the soft brush just to help with softening some of the light here. That's all I really need it for. If we want, we can just create a note layer. But this is all I'm really doing it. How I'm gonna treat it. It's just to kind of showcase areas of soft edges. I'm gonna go ahead and erase away areas where I don't need it. And I know it's kind of like, you know, it looks like we're treating it as a midtone, but you know, it's just for gradation purposes. That's all I'm really doing it for. But that way, if it helps consolidate any light form that we have, because I know it can get really tricky if certain areas have a lot of complex soft lighting. We can use the soft brush here to just kind of give us the illusion of softer light seeping through. But again, I want to keep things relatively in this kind of two-tone look. Combine this here. There you go. There you have it. There's our first little study. You know, relatively simple. There's our first little film study here. And you just want to look at, you know, when you squint your eyes, you want to be able to see just kind of the same values here. And that's all that's all I'm really trying to capture, is the likeness of it. And you can just see, like, when I turn off this little layer here, just like a little bit of that soft lighting will help if you're ever confused about how to consolidate some areas. Alright, let's move on to the next one. create another layer, and then again, I'm just gonna simplify and block everything down. I'm just gonna kind of go with the same routine and same motion. And this stuff is, you know, it's something that you can do while at a leisurely pace. You know, hang out. You can watch movies while doing this. So that's why I love kind of doing these studies. It allows for a lot of great. You know, you're still doing art. You're still practicing and studying, and getting a lot from it. But you're not so stressed out about all the details or the thinking aspect of it as much, because it's a lot of observation. That's all it really is. You know, you can just crank up some music and just kind of jam, you know. Go ahead and save. Now there are areas of obvious dark and light here. So let's just go ahead and simplify where we see those dark areas. You know, a lot of this stuff here too is something that I just want to just simplify and just put this all in dark, because it will allow us to just look at the pure graphic nature. Now anywhere where it's like a gradient, this is where I want you guys to look at it from your own point of view and see what you want to add. But this is, I don't want us to get into the habit of using the gradient to create midtones, because this starts to kind of defeat the purpose of that graphic look. It starts to get into the realm of rendering. So I'm only going to use this if we need to help amplify just some soft edges or some soft lighting. It's the only time I'm going to do that. So in this case, if this background here is dark and we need kind of that soft lighting or that edge, then I will just go ahead and make a note of that just in this area here. But for the most part, definitely want to keep it as graphic as I can. I don't want to go away from the main read. So a lot of this stuff here, I almost want just a simple darker graphic. And anything else around it, like the pillars and stuff like that, I definitely want to simplify as well. Let's go ahead and simplify all this stuff. Put it in dark. I might just end up actually getting rid of this gradient layer, because all it's really doing is just creating midtones right now. So we'll just turn it off for now. And the reason why I chose to do that is because I only want our eyes. I only want us to really pay attention to just the graphic read of things, and that's the most important thing. It's just how do we graphically perceive things. If there's some like wardrobe detail, we'll try to get that as much as we can. And then around the head here, I can choose to keep it light, just to play off that edge right here. And we do something like that. Also, we can simplify all the stuff that we see here. Just the basic architecture of this stuff. And all of this here, let's just go ahead and consolidate and really keep it simple. Simplicity is definitely the theme here today. I'm using the softness actually of my brush here to create that. That's kind of what I wanted to create actually. It wasn't necessarily the gradient, but it was kind of that soft marker airbrush gradient here. Do apologize for the confusion. Let's get this like weird poster here. And the way I'm doing that is I'm actually right-clicking and I'm holding down and basically painting I'm holding down here and I'm pressing right click and alt, and I can actually change the softness of my brush. This is a really nice handy tool for anyone that's interested. Okay, now let's get the rest of our furniture here. So this one is fairly complex, right? Imagine how much more complicated it would be if we were to have to render out all of these details. It would be insane just to do it in just to get the accuracy of all this. Get some of that light here. And that's kind of the soft edge that I wanted here. Just these really very obvious tones. And just the softness here of the light. Just to help us with that nice graphic read. Let's get in the graphic of the hair. The hairline. We'll move on after this here. Make sure that you guys aren't getting too bored, because again, these are studies after all. So I think once I show you a couple of these, you basically understand how I'm approaching all this, because it's just repetition from here. Okay, let's go ahead and turn off our red marks. And fix any of the features here. I don't want to zoom in too much, but this eye socket's really bugging me. again, for those who are very, very precise, you know, feel free to do this only if you really need to. But yeah, that's kind of the basic concept of these studies. Use my soft brush just to get some of these like soft shadows here cutting through. Shadows always do like a lot of strange ambiguous things, so I definitely want to try to capture that. And if you guys don't know, there's a couple of books that I'd love to recommend to you guys for this kind of for this type of stuff. There's a book by called Framed Ink by Marcus Mateo. Very, very solid book. Really great book on cinematography, understanding camera lens, and illustration stuff like this. You know, like Marcus Mateo actually goes over a lot of great design principles and shot principles that actually cover a lot of basic fundamentals, such as what I'm showing here. Highly recommended. But this is kind of this type of stuff that I would study when we build up to our keyframe illustration. You know, it's just doing a bunch of these studies. Again, there's things like this where there's an obvious light here. So this is where we can start to really evaluate and say, okay, well, it'd be nice to have a little bit of a shadow or a light shape here, just to kind of play up this edge. So I'm going to do that, just so we can really play up that edge of his hand. But I definitely want to simplify. So anything that's relatively in shadow, I definitely want to group it as much as I can so it doesn't get too distracting. Like this stuff here, I'm probably going to want to group it, so I'm just going to put on that soft gradient here and just kind of group the values down, because I don't think we need as much detail here. Alright, there you have it. There's number 2. Okay, last but not least, our third final study, and then we'll move on to some of the other stuff. So something like this, you know, you can actually just go ahead and block everything out. Again, just like what we did, and just leave the areas of light and just refine it. Again, for those of you who really want that nice subtlety here, this is where you can slow down and illustrate the exactness in the face. And I'm actually using I've actually softened the edges here of my brush, so I can kind of get these nice softer edges. Because there's a lot of soft shadow shapes here. And even here, you see across the clothing here, this is where I'm going to capitalize on that, this soft edge. And I want something more or less like that. And then we can revert back to our hard edge brush. And I just go back and on top, get some of these folds and stuff like that. Get all this right here. It's probably going to be in black and shadow, so I'm going to just simplify all this stuff. See, this is where I don't want to worry too much about these midtones back here. These darker values and these darker tones. Again, pure graphic read. Probably need just a little bit more light shape on the cheek here. So let's just open that up just a little bit. We'll do something like that, and then just block all this stuff in black. These are like the easiest studies. However, these studies are actually one of the most impactful, just because the subject matter of what we're looking at, the character, is so clear. And it's this kind of stuff that allows us to, when we go on top of our own image, our own illustration, we're able to simplify and create a very impactful image just through simple graphics, just like this. I know there's all these planes on the face and forms and stuff like that, but I'm almost not going to even worry about all that detail and all those lighting scenarios. I just want to get the simple read of our character and call it done. There you have it. There is our character. Okay, so it took us a little while to get there. Each one took approximately probably 10-15 minutes, probably more longer, due to my my explanation and all that stuff like that. But something that I want you guys to do is, before you get into doing your own shots is, you know, just take a moment and let's just do a couple of studies. And the studies can be as very simple as what I'm showing here, or what I've demonstrated. And again, the whole goal is just to have a really nice understanding of graphic read, and just kind of get a good handle on how to simplify and create really nice frames based off of an existing film. And then from here, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and actually do our own set and go from there. Alright, so let's consolidate this stuff here. And we have a couple of these guys, and I just wanted to show you guys the range here, but I think you guys understand it for the most part. There is one in particular that I'll show you guys as an extra little demo here. But this one, the way I utilize this kind of shot, you guys might see this and say, okay, well, how does it work in this scenario? Because that is relatively a very light image. Well, first off, what I do is I crunch the values, but more importantly, I try to simplify everything that we see. And here, what I see here is a very simple ground plane, and I see the shape of a house, you know, more or less kind of like this. And once I establish the shape of the house, then I'm going to establish just some of the details, like the rooftop here. This little sort of architectural detail, like this little bell tower thing. Okay, and then the structures holding up the bell. And then we're gonna have a little bit of a softer edge here on the bottom, and I'm not gonna even worry about all these little details of our of the house or this little church. And I'm just gonna mark down or note just some of the details here. It's a little hard to make out, and I'm seeing just some distant structures, but mainly it's just this tree. And I'm going to do my best to kind of illustrate this really gnarled looking tree structure. Trees are one of the hardest things to draw, for me at least. It's like figure drawing on crack or something. The forms are so strange, and there's so much gesture. I'm sure for some of you, it's probably a walk in the park, but it is a weakness of mine. Okay, so just kind of getting in the basic gesture of this here. But what I wanted to show you guys in this case is how I'm simplifying and how I just actually created this shot just using the black and white values. Now again, there's this image right here is very low key in the sense that it doesn't have much dark range, but I need to consolidate and create that range. Got all these gnarled looking structures here. But what I was going to say is basically, if you guys have shots like this is where you want to consolidate as much as you can of the values. And then you want to use a soft brush in this sense, in this case, and this is where I'm actually going to just do a simple gradient, just like that. And this is basically the way I wanted to utilize my soft brush. It's just to kind of get the indication of light going from light to dark. And that's all I really wanted to show you guys. But you can see this is more the graphic representation, and this is with it having a gradient. Alright, cool. So let's just do a quick recap here. So this is just our initial film study, and I wanted to show you guys the process of going from, you know, studying and simplifying, using some lines as a guideline, but also using just some darker soft edges. And this is kind of what I want to show you guys, and also just thinking about editing down all of the shapes into very simple graphic reads. Okay, and then from there, if in case you have a scenario like this, you want to simplify all of the details, keep it as graphic as you can, and then actually do something that's more representative of just the overall lighting scenario, the lighting graphic. And that's basically how we want to go about lighting this concept. I will show you guys just some of the other examples of what I did here. This is from the previous post, but basically this was a study of the Maleficent one, and you can just see here how it was simplified, and actually there's no gradients in this one. I kept it very straightforward. Now if there were gradients and I were to apply gradients, it would actually be just in these darker areas, and I would almost just use it to kind of soften up kind of the light edge, just to keep things relatively a bit less harsh, but still nice and graphic. Just kind of eliminate areas of, and that's all it really does for us. And when I take out the two, you can just see how graphically it's still the same. However, we're creating kind of these nice soft edges, and this is basically what I wanted to show you guys. Okay. Alright, now with this said, let's get on to doing some of our own compositions. Alright, so let's get started into creating our own frames here. What I'm actually going to do is I'd love to kind of use some of our initial thumbnails as kind of a way to build a visual library for our own shots. So let's just go ahead and do something like this. Let's grab a couple of these and see what we got. Oops. Okay, we got these, and let's grab one more. Okay, let's grab one more here. I'm gonna grab this. Let's grab this Maleficent one. This is great. Okay, so with these, what I want to do is I actually just want to look at the way the shot handle light and dark shadow shapes, and that's one of the most important things for me to take away from this is just the way it actually utilized the light and shadow shapes. So starting off with just this one here, we'll turn this off. We have a very identifiable silhouette with kind of more of a softer gradient tone. So we're going to do our own shot using that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you guys to create a simple white background and just sketch in our own concept here. And I'm thinking of like kind of this idea of this rover of some sort. We'll keep it with like a space theme. And this rover is on this ledge, kind of overlooking a canyon. And I'm going to Dutch the camera angle, obviously. As you can see, it's a bit, definitely a bit disorientating, but I'm going to go with kind of this concept here. And maybe we'll keep it three-wheeled or something. Maybe something like that. Like kind of a vehicle idea with our little character, our astronaut character. I'm gonna do a series of these little astronaut characters here, kind of similar to our past demo. Maybe the I don't know, maybe we can change the orientation of this vehicle. And notice how loose I'm actually going. Again, this is all just kind of keeping it fairly loosey-goosey. Okay, now once we have our sketch, this is where I want to take the time to block in the shadow shapes. So since we're going with this kind of concept, I'm literally going to block in all of my darker values. And it's literally going to be more of a silhouette. There's not going to be much light and shadow detail. I'm going to go off of more of this silhouette shape. And even this cliff here is going to be all in silhouette. This is probably going to be the most simple, straightforward concept. Alright, so we got our little astronaut dude. Block him in. And he's going to be silhouetted as well. Pose him like that. Maybe there's like some ties or something, some oxygen kind of apparatus kind of tethered to our character. And maybe it's just some like rock structures here. You know, kind of like off into the distance. And it's funny how like this stuff seems a lot quicker to do than studying, only because it's literally my own composition, and you know, I'm not necessarily trying to get in any accuracy because it's just whatever that's in my head. Maybe we can have like some sort of like some river valley or canyon. Okay, there you have it. We have our very simple silhouette. Now with this, now I want to actually add in my lighting pass. Which is going to be this, because this is kind of what the effect we want. And I'm going to just do something like this. And that's generally kind of the concept. I want just a little bit of light coming back. I can slightly erase away. But for the most part, that's generally kind of the shot that I want to depict using the same sort of lighting scenario here. Let's go ahead and refine just a little bit of this guy here. There you have it. Our very first composition using this sort of scenario. So let's go ahead and do another one. So we have one. So let's go off of our this Maleficent one that we all liked, or that I liked. Start off with a blank canvas here, and again we can decide to draw it out, but this time I'm just gonna kind of freeball it, if that's even a term, and I'm just gonna create my own graphic composition using the same sort of lighting scenario. But this time I kind of want this sort of more natural type of landscape of like rocks and mounds and stuff like that to be kind of the basis of my aesthetic. Maybe something like that. And then we'll have our little our character, our guy here. Right here in the center. thinking it might be cool if our if we had our astronaut or our little space guy right here. Maybe we'll put him right here, slightly off center. Kind of walking up or finding this opening for the very first time. Maybe he's holding like a gun or something. Like some sort of like pulse rifle. And then we want, I'm gonna kind of continue his this little breathing device. And then continue drawing out maybe just the shadow. And again, I have an opportunity here to kind of play with a little bit of the structures here, just to add in a little bit more light and shadow shapes. So I'm gonna go ahead and add in just some lighting that this side of the cliff might be getting. And I'm almost imagining, like, you know, maybe our character here is actually entering or looking into kind of like a light pool coming through a cave. Maybe that's what we're seeing. And then just to really play up the edges, how we talked about earlier, this is where I'm going to turn my brush into a softer edge and just kind of play up some of the darker shadow bits here, just to kind of have that soft edge look. So not everything is too punchy. Okay, we can go here and just refine just a little bit of the edge here of our silhouette or our character. Maybe just some interesting indication of a design of our backpack of some sort. And I'm just going to go ahead and simplify what's around him, like these little cracks and stuff, just to keep a really clean, simple graphic shape. So that the only thing that we see and that we can identify with is just the graphic nature. Maybe having a little bit more white negative shape here will help. All right, there you go. There we have it. Our second concept, our second image here. This one's relatively simple as well. And again, I'm just kind of going off of what we have based off of our study. Okay, so this is kind of the general idea. This is basically how I would actually approach doing some of these extended concepts based off of an existing frame, just to kind of create or come up with our own series of compositions, or our own concepts. So there you go. We have A and we have B. So let's go ahead and group this into our second lesson. Okay. Now, just to elaborate on this, I'm actually going to take us to our second session, or our third part of the demo, and that is basically coming up with our own compositions. And this is where let's go ahead and just do four frames here. And I'm actually going to come up with a series of my own designs and my own compositions here. And let's go ahead and actually start off by either one, we can sketch it out, or two, start off with something very abstract. So I'm going to go ahead and utilize the two up here for coming up with our own concept by sketching it out. And these can be relatively rough, right? And rough as in it can be a simple idea, simple concept. I'm going to add more of our space guys here. And this actually is a shout out to one of my students, Michael Raiti, who's actually doing a very similar theme. And so I'm going to give the credit out to him for kind of setting the tone for this whole space theme. I can't take the credit for this subject matter. So thank you, Michael, for inspiring me for doing this, for this type of subject matter. But yeah, I definitely want kind of this idea of like these guys, these space soldiers, kind of walking in and holding a gun, like a scope or something. Have all the gear right here, and maybe just another guy right off, looking off into the other distance here, just kind of like scouting or kind of looking, watching everyone else's back. Okay, so we have something like that as one idea. We'll do another idea where maybe there's kind of this like large opening of some sort. Maybe he has to actually kneel down to get in. Or maybe there's just like this big kind of structure, and this guy is actually like calling them over or something. So this part is going to take a little bit of your own research and exploration, because again, this is based off of your own concept and not necessarily, you know, something that you're studying. However, the same principles do apply when it comes to the application portion. Maybe we have our other guy way back here in the distance. Another little astronaut dude. Okay, so when we have something like this, the first thing I'm going to start off with is starting with our black and white silhouettes. Right? Just graphically thinking about it. Now, the thing that I want to solidify is basically where the light direction is going to come from. So I'm going to say that the light's is going to come from here. So if that's the case, I'm going to go ahead and mark this stuff down as being the darker value. We're going to say light is seeping through from this side. And I'm using the softer edge of my brush to keep it relatively simple and graphic, just as a start. And then I'm going to go ahead and actually go in and start drawing out my figures. start drawing in our shadows here, and also just kind of some of where the areas where we're gonna have definite light is probably hitting part of the clothing here, and areas where it's going to be in shadow, which is going to be all of the chest here. And I have an indication of kind of like a sniper scope of some sort. And again, this is just using all of our drawing as a way to kind of visually guide us. So if it wasn't for the drawing, we would be in complete lost land. It would just be a complete guessing game. Maybe some sort of like head unit thing. And then the body, the rest of the suit here, maybe just some pockets and stuff like that that are open. Okay. Do that. Now, if it ever gets too like busy, you know, you always have the freedom of turning on and off the lights, or the lines, I mean, just to keep things relatively simple. But I like keeping on the lines just to ensure, like, you know, where I'm going with my actual graphic sketch. Okay, do something like that. Have a light here. And then all of the rest of the body here can actually be in silhouette of our character. Just double check and see how it looks, and that's kind of what we're ending up with right now. So it's not too bad. Let's just go ahead and simplify. This is where I'm gonna turn off our our line drawing, so we can understand kind of the shapes we're creating. The shapes as in like the shadow shapes. Go ahead and add a little bit of light in areas where you need to indicate just a little bit more detail. Maybe add some pouches back here for this guy. And we have another character here. Can't forget about this guy. Let's go ahead and save this out. But who's definitely going to have the most amount of shadow? So we're going to play with his silhouette, especially for the face here. This is what I really want. I want this kind of like lost edge right here with these shadow shapes. This is what's going to make it actually somewhat complex and nice. And I can bring in just a little bit of that detail. Add a new layer. Just to spell out any additional highlights and things like that. For doing lines like this, like I actually use the stroke selection just to do like really simple graphic lines. Stroke, and then you can do like 1 to 2 pixels. Generally work fairly well. Okay, when we have that, starting to have a nice range of detail and stuff. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn off my line layer, and notice all the white here that's kind of like a little random and kind of sloppy in my opinion. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit more light shapes just to help kind of beef up a little bit of our silhouette here. Okay, but some of this light shape here, a lot of these light shapes, I'm actually going to go ahead and dial this down using our soft brush. Just to have a little bit of a nicer gradient. Actually, we can create another layer here. Just use this to kind of control. But I kind of just want a nice simple gradient there. And then this is an opportunity as well to even add a little bit more detail, and also just kind of look and evaluate our image and see what else needs a little bit more clarity. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and actually block out the silhouette here. More of this negative shape, and actually go here, oops, and maybe even erase. Or bring back some of the shadow shape here, just to kind of help give me a little bit of a nice graphic here. Bring this back just a little bit, just a hair. Okay, cool, there we have it. We're composition number 2. And anything that's in shadow that I have an opportunity to kind of add a little bit of a highlight there, I'm definitely going to utilize that. That's composition number 2. It's looking fairly good. Kind of the way I wanted. You know, it was based off of a sketch, so it's actually not too off. Let's go ahead and do our other one here, but this time we have our sketch here, and we can go ahead and actually use this as an underlay and do this one. This one I'm going to keep it relatively simple, and it's going to be just more of a silhouetted kind of deal. And you can just see kind of the way I'm carving out my shape here. But I'm going to carve out our character and leave our character in white in this scenario, since it's being silhouetted, or since it's being backlit like this. I mean, this would be the strategic way of handling this kind of lighting scenario. We got like kind of these weird structures back here. Add that in. And maybe just even on the ground here. Add a little bit of a softer lighting scenario. Just adding a little bit more negative shape here to add a little bit of interest. And then this is where I'm going to add our lighting. Now I'm assuming that a lot of the light here, especially for this character, is going to be backlit. So we're going to go with more of a silhouette kind of base for this character way back here. And we're going to give him also kind of the whole Space Marine gun look. Kind of standing guard. This guy's obviously coming more forward. But again, I really want to play up the concept of light coming from this kind of this shape back here behind us. Everything else leading up to it is just going to be in shadow. So this is going to be a much more simpler composition, as you can see. I'm actually kind of also making sure that the bubble helmet is actually a lot more lighter. So I'm going to bump that up in value. Again, we have our main character here. Definitely put him in shadow. Kind of keep this a bit more simple. And try to eliminate a lot of the details here, and I'm gonna just turn this off, and you can see that for the most part the guys in the back are reading really well. Now it's this here that's getting a little confusing, so this is where we're gonna have to do a lot of consolidating and really figure out, okay, what is the focal point. So I definitely want this gun that he's pointing to be fairly legible, so I'm gonna add a lot of my light source here, and I'm gonna add just a little bit more information to his hand, the orientation of the hand. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's turn this off. We got the hand here. Notice I'm actually taking a lot of it out just to get this to read. And then we're gonna just kind of rim light the areas where we want to bring back just a little bit more detail. And here on this side, it's just gonna be all silhouette, so I'm not gonna worry too much about that. If anything, I could probably bring back just a little bit more silhouette information. Again, these are all just big abstract shapes. And here, we can add just a little bit more information on the hand holding the gun. Maybe just a little bit more shadow on this hand, this arm. Again, sometimes it's better to hide things a bit in more silhouette than to spell everything out. You just only want to spell out exactly what you need. And I think this is all I really need. something like that. There you go. There is our second composition. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do some really quick ones for you guys to kind of get a good gesture or good understanding of how I'm gesturing these ones. I'm actually going to go ahead and just start off by adding in just some quickie details here, or just shadow shapes. And then from here, I'm going to go ahead and actually do just my own version of what we would actually see here. So these ones are going to go a lot quicker, and you guys will find that, you know, as you do more of these, you'll start to see how abstract you can start to get, but how quick this process can actually be. You know, when we start getting into more of the development of these keyframes, just so it's not like this, you know, exact process every single time. But this one, I'm thinking it might be a much more simpler concept of our character here. Holding a gun. And just being lit from the side. This one's really simple, right? You guys can see how I generated this one, and the background here is actually completely random, but notice how we give it just a little bit of context by adding a character or identifiable structures. So if this, we want to make it a little bit more something, then we just add just more detail to make it somewhat identifiable of what it is. I just need to kind of fix that hand here. Something like that should do. Okay, cool. There we go. We have one. And maybe I can just add a little figure back here. And sometimes it can be really simple too. Not everything has to be this crazy lit kind of environment, but it can be, you know, something more simple. And even something like this, which I really see a lot of opportunity for, just much more of a simpler composition. Even if it was like, you know, some sort of like, we see like some structures here in the distance. Maybe just some crazy shapes. But this one can be much more simple in the sense that, what if we're only seeing just our little figures here? You know, walking. We got the one that's lagging behind. Just a little bit of a softer shadow for some of these shapes here. And I'm just going to refine some of this stuff. There you go. Much more simple composition and approach for how to do these. I really hope you guys enjoyed this process. Please let me know if you guys have any questions, and feel free to email me at jp4johnpark@gmail.com. And yeah, thank you guys again for watching and supporting these tutorials. It's always really fun to do these, but more importantly, just to see, you know, what you guys create out of it. I mean, I was able to see, fortunate enough to see some examples of, you know, some of the stuff done from other artists, you know, based on these tutorials, and it's so cool. You know, they take it to a completely different level, much more elaborate than what I would have thought of. So please, you know, I would love to see or share anything that you guys do for this and the story you guys build. There we go. We have our little soldier dudes kind of walking about into the darkness. Alright guys, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks again.